Welcome to today's episode of Sassy Detectives. We're your hosts, Tori
and Rae.
We are here to talk about anything and everything Nancy Drew, and today we'll be talking about Nancy Drew book number 168, The Bike Tour Mystery. Roll the intro. Okay,
So,
we read a book again.
it was a book.
It was a book. So this is the book that Her Interactive says they based Haunting of Castle Malloy on.
Yeah, reportedly, yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
huh?
The only similarity is that there are Irish people in Ireland, and there is a British person, or two British people, I think.
Yeah.
And some Americans.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. And, there's a bog. Did you say that?
There is a bog. There is a bog. I did not say that, but yes, there is a bog. But there is not a bog witch.
There are no more
not a bog witch hermit. Yeah, it's a book.
It's a book. We'll talk about it. We'll go through it. This book was published in 2002.
Yay!
So this book is younger than Secrets Can Kill.
Yes. Yay.
All right. So
but it is.
Shall we just go through it chapter by chapter? How you? I don't remember how we did the last book.
We just went through it chapter by chapter and then made comments on things because with these plots, like there's something.
Should I read the back of the book as like a launch pad?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Please. I don't have the back of the book because I have the Kindle version, so.
Oh, okay. I have the physical book because I had made it a mission years ago to buy all of the books physically that Her Interactive said the games were based off of. So I do have this one.
Sorry, I just choked on my water again.
Careful now.
I'm not good at drinking water today.
Riding uphill is hard, but going down can send you over the edge. Nancy, Bess, and George are all geared up for a bike tour in Ireland. They're looking forward to spectacular scenery, romantic ruins, local entertainment, and at the end of the day, cozy inns to welcome them. But it isn't long before the three friends realize that they're riding with danger. From the moment they arrive at the airport, someone seems to be targeting the tour members, especially the two teen sisters from Australia. Even worse, not all the cyclists are what they appear to be. As the group bikes along sheep-filled roads and steep seaside cliffs, the menace mounts. Nancy knows that if she makes one wrong turn, she'll be on a detour to disaster.
Oh my god, the bike puns.
Yeah. Yeah.
The puns are... They're... Yeah, I like it. It's funny. Okay, I'll accept it.
Okay. This is like the kind of camp that like I actually like think is really funny.
It is.
But the book as a whole, a little weird. Okay.
Yeah.
So the book starts. Okay. And there's like an entire page where George basically begrudges Bess her amount of luggage.
Yeah, it's like, girl, leave Bess alone. Because, like, they're in an airport, and they just got their bags and stuff, or they've all got their bags except Bess. And, like, George just tells Bess, oh my gosh, you didn't bring that many clothes. And Bess is like, well, I'm not going to be going to dinner wearing the same clothes that I wore biking, because that's going to be sweaty and gross. And George is like, well, I will. And I'm just like...
I'm with Bess on this.
I'm with Bess on this, because, like, you spend the whole day cycling. You're gonna be disgusting.
Right.
Like, there's no way.
So, anyway,
sorry,
they're at the airport.
George.
Yeah, they're at the airport in Ireland. They get their bags. They go through customs, and then they meet up with, like, the tour director. And his name is...
Bob.
Bob. Yes, Bob.
Yes.
His name is Bob.
His name
and
is
Bob.
Bob.
Is like, hi, I'm the guy.
Did you ever have that phase as a kid where the name Bob was literally the peak of comedy?
I never really thought about it, but now that you mention it, I feel like Bob is kind of a funny guy name.
It is. Well, we have like
It's like Larry.
Bob the Tomato.
The peak of comedy right there is Bob the Tomato.
Bob and Larry, the ultimate comedic duo.
I mean, you're not wrong. I was a homeschooler.
You were?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did we just find out that we're both homeschooled?
Yeah, I was homeschooled from 2nd grade all the way to high school graduation.
Wow, this makes sense. I was homeschooled up till high school, but wow. The more you know, kids.
Yeah, I was a homeschool kid. You were homeschooled too, right?
Yeah, up till high school, yeah. It was... Yeah. Anyway, the more you know about us.
Yeah, homeschool kid. We were both homeschools. So we meet some other people in the crew, in the tour group. We got Carl. He's a professor. We got Jim and Natalie. They're Californian peoples. Who else do we have? I think that's everybody until the twins arrive.
Yes, we have Rhonda and Rachel Selkirk.
Yeah.
They are both tall.
I think it's kind of strange because Bess asks them, are you twins or just sisters? But they're described as being one redheaded and one brunette, which I guess you can dye hair.
Yeah.
But it seems like a strange thing to be like, are you twins?
I don't know. I've met some twins that are identical, that I've met some twins that look nothing alike.
Okay, that's fair. Fraternal twins are a thing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of giving Bess, you can't just ask someone if they're twins. I don't know.
Yeah. And then...
Ooh, also, we have Terry as well, who is the driver who does all... I can't do anything today. I can't speak things.
That's okay.
But we have Terry, and he drives the truck and does the handyman stuff, and
he's grumpy as heck.
Yes, he's the grumpy dude. I wonder if that's who they based Denal after, but no, I like Denal better. Denal is more fun.
Denal is more fun, but I guess if we had to make a tie, I would say that Terry is probably the inspiration for Denal. I just realized the last book that we read also had a character named Terry. She was the theater girl that we were trying to help.
Yeah, I remember Terry. Huh.
So
we should do
we're just gonna read all the Nancy books that with characters named Terry for this podcast.
We'll have like a little tally going. How many Terrys have we encountered in these books?
So anyway, so then that's everybody, and they load into the van, and as they're loading into the van, Nancy had seen like this suspicious dude in a black overcoat in the airport, and she sees him again.
He also is missing his pinky finger.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one he was missing, but he was missing one of them. So
yeah. So he's missing a pinky
she's like,
finger.
That's suspicious.
Yeah.
That also sounds a little bit weird, Nancy. Like, oh my gosh, somebody doesn't have one finger? That's weird. That's suspicious. Like, Nancy. Oh my god.
An injury does not make somebody suspicious.
Yeah, Nancy.
But then
tactless Nancy strikes again.
Yeah,
will she never learn?
At least she's tactless in both the games and books, I guess.
Continuity.
I think she's way more tactful in like the classic series.
Yeah,
book series.
She's still got some moments, but
true.
She's at least a little bit more tactful.
At
least she's not going around asking people, can you tell me about your dead mom? I know what happened to your dead wife. Like, Nancy, please.
So Nancy sees the guy again out on the sidewalk as they're getting into the tour bus thing, and Rachel looks out the window and also sees the man, and then she freezes in fear. And that's how the first chapter ends. So, did you think, before we keep moving, did you think that this book had a little bit of like they just had like filler moments? Like, I feel like you might be able to condense this whole story down into like 5 chapters.
Oh, definitely. There are so many parts where I'm just like, this is so, what, like, you could, yeah. Like, usually I do, like, filler scenes in books, but they have to, like, be pertaining to, like, not, if they're not pertaining to the plot, they have to be there to build character, to build relationships, stuff like that. They need to have some substance. But here, there's one chapter where there's just, like, a bunch of Irish dancing for, like, no reason.
Yeah.
Except for Ireland. And George tries it and stuff. It's like, there's no purpose to this.
Right.
You know? Or there will be parts where, like, there's a tiny thing that happens in the big scene that does other stuff, but you could have just added that to a different part of another scene.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of editing critiques in this, like, writing-wise, and
true.
especially prose-wise. But that is not why we are reading this book.
No, it's not. I think you just kind of have to like accept, especially when you get to sort of this era of Nancy Drew books, that like these books were written with like a middle school grade level in mind.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is what it is. So anyway, we're moving on. Moving on in the story. So, Rhonda and Rachel are like, "Oh, did you see that?" And Rhonda's like, "What the heck are you talking about? We've only been in Ireland for like an hour. There's obviously nobody here that we know."
No, you forgot. They're Australian. You need to do it in a really bad Australian accent.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to all of our Australian viewers.
Sorry, mate. Anyway. Well, I think I'm not going to try to do an Australian accent right now.
Oh my goodness. I just realized I said viewers? Are you guys watching the podcast?
Viewers? The viewers.
I meant listeners.
They watch the little, like, you're timeline.
Yeah.
Pick up.
That's all. They just watch the green bar on Spotify or the red bar on YouTube. They don't listen to anything we say. They just watch that.
That's all. Who cares what we're saying? They're just trying to get through.
As long as the bar is moving, there we go.
So anyway, so Nancy gets on the bus and she's like, "Oh, you quit being so suspicious all the time, Nancy. Like, not everything's a mystery." You know, a little tongue in cheek as we have to have. So then they go and there's farmland and they talk a little bit about Ireland. And they get to the first hotel for the night and Bob wants to have like a meeting with everybody. So they get everybody together and then they meet the last 2 people who were not at the airport. And this is Derek and Camilla.
The British people.
The British people, and they are a couple, from what I understand. It's kind of vague, actually. Like, I think they're a couple.
They're definitely a couple, but in a way where everybody's like, are they a couple? Like, are they a couple?
Like they don't really act, they don't act like a couple, like, a few times.
Yeah.
So,
like, they're obviously a couple, but he is also, like, not a good boyfriend.
No.
Like, man is checking out other people, and I'm like, boy, your girl is right there.
And Bess makes a big, huge deal about how hot he is because she's Bess. And I guess that's important to her for this part of the book. I don't know. Anyway. So, they are all talking around, and there's like a waiter and he passes around some drinks, and Bob's like, hang on to these like pamphlets, they're your itineraries, and you'll get maps and stuff each day for the bike tour, and like the stuff that we're gonna explore and where we're gonna have lunch and all these things. And Terry's job.
They also talk about They also talk about how, like, the cyclists, they will be in, like, pairs and stuff, but, like, the pairs will switch every day. So, like, you could get to know each other and stuff, and so nobody gets left behind, because some people are not good cyclists, and they will need to take multiple breaks, and they will be left alone in Ireland.
Yeah.
So,
and then they get like the cell phones per team and all that good stuff. And then Bob's like, "Come on out and pick your bikes." And then but Rhonda and Rachel already have their own bikes because they're rich. Not because they're pro cyclists, but because they're rich. But then everybody else goes out and they they pick their bikes from the rental bikes. And they like try them out and all that good stuff. And then they go, they kind of go back to their rooms, I think. And Bess, George, and Nancy are kind of talking about everybody. And Nancy tells them about the weird, shifty looking guy from the airport. And how Rachel recognized him and she looked pretty upset. And Nancy talks about how weird it was. And then George is like, you need to chill out, Nancy. You're so paranoid. Then they go down for dinner. And they're kind of talking to people at dinner. And Rachel comes up and talks to them. And she's kind of like talking about the landscape or whatever. And as they're talking, Nancy hears a thud behind her. And she turns around. And Rhonda is like collapsed on the floor. So now everybody's like freaking out. And I guess Rhonda was sitting next to Derek. And Derek jumps up and he's like, "We were just talking. And, then she just fell over." And everybody's like, "Oh no." And then Bob comes over and he's like checking on her. And Bess is like, "She's breathing just fine." And she doesn't have any like weird symptoms that you would typically have when you like fainted. And so everybody's kind of confused and like wondering how that happened and like what was the cause.
Yeah, and Rachel also is really alarmed because that was her drink that Rhonda was drinking. And so that really freaked her out. So, yikes.
Yeah, so they kind of set the drink aside because they're gonna, Carl, who is the one who's a college professor, he thinks that he could potentially test it to see like what could potentially be in the drink. He just needs to like get some supplies or something. So they set it aside on like a side table while Carl goes out to like get some things and they start cleaning up otherwise. And they like refuse like any sort of like doctor or whatever for Rhonda, who's passed out. And they don't want the police involved. And Nancy's like, "What do you mean like they don't want the police involved?" And Bob's like, "It's a violation of their privacy. I promise them." And then he like stops and she's like, "What does that mean?" And Bob's kind of like I don't know, he's kind of confrontational to Nancy. And Nancy says something like, I would want the police called.
Sometimes she deserves it.
Yeah, true. And then he's like, "Well, what do you know about their situation?" And I was like, whoa, bruh, not that serious. And then while Nancy and Bob are talking about like what should we do, Nancy hears like a shatter and she turns around and the glass of soda had been knocked off the table where Carl had put it aside. And it's like soaking into the carpet and Terry had knocked it over. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so clumsy."
Dang it, Terry!
He's cleaning up all of the glass. And then Nancy's like, "Well, dang, now how are we going to test the soda to see like what happened and why Rhonda passed out?" And then Nancy gives Bess and George like the nod, like the "we need to talk" nod,
Yeah.
And they go up to the room and Nancy's like, "Terry spilled the soda." And And they're like, well, what do we do? Like, it could have just been an accident. And Nancy's like, no, I don't think it's an accident. I think it's did on purpose. You know, she's being all suspicious.
Yeah.
And then Nancy's like, I think something fishy's going on. There's something going on with Rhonda and Rachel.
George is like, well, I think Derek is pretty sus. And Bess is like, how dare you? He's hot.
Yeah. You can never suspect the hot guy. Hot guys can't do bad things. That's Bess's
George is
opinion.
like, oh, come on, Bess.
I just want to state that is not my opinion. I do think that hot men can do bad things. But Bess does not think that, apparently.
This is the... I was just going to say something about Tumblr things, but I don't know if I want to say that on the podcast.
I also just had a thought, and I'm gonna expose myself, and I kind of talked about this.
Oh no!
But I feel like Derek is to Bess what Thanos is to me.
Yes.
Sorry. I have to separate my brain. Okay. So anyway, Nancy's like, well, we gotta, you know, we can't rule him out. And then George is like, yeah, I mean, isn't it kind of sus that, like, he came here with his girlfriend and he keeps spending all this time around Rhonda and Rachel? Like, isn't that kind of weird?
It is so kind of weird.
Yeah, and so Nancy's like, okay, well, maybe we'll go back downstairs. And so they go back downstairs, and they run into Derek in the hallway, and he's like crouched in the corner of the hunched over in the hallway, and he's recording something into like a tape recorder, like in his hand. Mm-hmm. And then he like shoves it into his pocket, and he's like, oh, ha ha ha, no, hi, you know. So that's not sus at all. So doctor never came. Rhonda's like, oh no, it's fine, you know, I'm good. Which I don't know how often you faint. I fainted kind of recently, and I felt bad when I came to. Yeah. So I don't know. If there was like a doctor nearby that could look at me, I would feel better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird that Rhonda's like, no, I don't need to see a doctor or whatever. And then Nancy's like, oh, this part's so funny. Okay, this part's so funny.
Oh my gosh, yes!
So Derek is like, so where are your friends? And Nancy's like, in the bathroom. And Derek says, you mean the loo.
I'm making it my mission to teach you Americans the local lingo, you know.
Yeah, okay,
that is my worst English accent, by the way.
It's okay. I thought it was all right.
It's so funny. What British person actually calls the bathroom the loo all the time? Know. Wait, let me look it up. Let me look it up on Google. Do British people actually... Oh my gosh, the search things. The first thing that comes up when I searched up do British people actually is eat beans on toast. But, say the loo. Okay, but what do you say loo or toilet? Okay, so okay, it says everybody I know in the south of England says loo. Okay, so it's an informal British term for a toilet or a lavatory.
Okay.
But yeah, it doesn't... Some people say it comes from a French phrase. Some people say it comes from Waterloo.
ABBA just popped into my head.
Apparently... Waterloo! But apparently they do say it. Huh. But that's so funny how he actually corrects her on it. You're not even in England! You're in Ireland! Like, it isn't local lingo. You're not in... Unless you're Northern Ireland, and that would be the United Kingdom, but it says Ireland, okay? We're in Ireland, not Northern Ireland. We are not part of the United Kingdom. Derek, get your British colonizer butt out of here.
Yeah, tell them.
This is the British. This is the British taking over Ireland all over again. How dare he?
Okay, so that whole thing happens, and then Nancy goes into the dining room with him, and Derek's like, well, we should mingle, and Nancy's like, okay, and then Derek basically forces her to sit next to Camilla, and then Derek leaves and sits down with Bob and Terry, and so Nancy's like, okay, that's weird, but she's like watching him, and then she orders off the menu, and when she looks up to watch him again, he's gone out of his chair. So
Derek is sus.
Yeah, so later in the room, it cuts to later in their room. Bess and George and Nancy are talking, and Nancy says that she saw him try to snap a picture of Rhonda while she was passed out, which is a weird as heck thing to do. Whispers into the tape recorder and then makes Nancy sit down away from Rhonda and Rachel, which is very weird. And so they're talking about how sus he is, and then George suggests that they should ride with Rhonda and Rachel tomorrow during the bike tour, and Nancy's like, yeah, okay, that's cool, like, I'm down for that.
But she also says one of my favorite things in the book, which is, on River Heights time, it's only 4 p.m., but it's 10 here, and I'm totally zonked.
Zonked. I feel like I sometimes use that word, but I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a boomer word.
Oh, you're not a boomer.
Well, not quite.
I said that in a weird accent.
Not a boomer. Thank you. I don't know.
My Victorian orphan voice.
Okay, Oliver Twist.
Please, may I have some more? No more British things. We're in Ireland. I want to give Ireland some respect.
Okay. So, the next morning, George is like, okay, let's go over. And, Bess is like, okay, yeah, you ride with Rhonda and Rachel, and I'm gonna ride with Derek. And she's like, well, you said we should watch him too. And George is like, are you kidding me? So then they're like, okay, so, they talk about how Rhonda and Rachel's bikes match. They're both magenta, but Rachel put silver tape on her handlebars and Rhonda has black tape on her handlebars, which does come into play later. So that's why I mention it.
Yeah.
And so Rachel and Nancy ride together, and then Rhonda and George ride together, and Rhonda's kind of snippy at George, and anyway, they take off, and they're riding, and Nancy just keeps talking to Rachel, and Rachel turns around and she's like, I'm sorry, but like, I really don't want to be like talking while I'm riding, and honestly, I don't really blame her.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, thanks, Nancy, for being a weirdo. And then Nancy's like, okay. And then she talks about how, there's a line that says Nancy's afraid that Rachel would now write her off as a chatty airhead. And I find that really funny. So, they're cycling. They stop.
Oh, there's so much of it.
There's so much of them just like cycling and stopping and looking at a view and cycling. And then they stop at a cliff or whatever, and they're looking, and Rachel's like, oh, we still have some uphill riding to do. And she like crouches down and she like runs her fingers through the gravel by the road's edge and by Nancy's bike. And then she's like, oh, what's that? And Nancy kind of looks up or whatever, and then Rachel stands up and she's like, okay, well, we should get going. Okay, haha, bye. And then she jumps on her bike and they pedal off again. And as that happens, all of a sudden, Nancy's front wheel like pops. So the tire's totally flat, and she's like, how did that happen? And Rachel's like, oh, crud. Looks like you gotta be picked up by Terry. So Nancy has to phone Terry, And Rachel's like, oh, look, there's some more people from our group, so I'm going to go ride with them. Okay, bye. And then she leaves. And Nancy's like, something must have happened to my tire. Rachel must have slashed my tire, which seems like a stretch, but okay, sure. Rachel slashed a tire. So, well, that's Nancy's theory. And then it cuts to later, and Bess is like, you finished the route after Terry picked you up, like everything's cool. And Nancy's like, I just can't stop thinking about the flat tire. But they're at a pub and there's musicians. So that's fun. And everybody's eating and chilling at the pub. And they talk about how sore they are. And then they hear kind of like a weird, she hears like a weird noise and like a moan of pain from outside the door. So Nancy gets up and runs outside, and now Rachel is laying on the street with the big heavy wooden sign like smashed into her head and beside her on the thing, because
yep,
you know, it's totally normal for there to be 2 injuries in 2 days in a row like this. And then but then it just continues where the girls, the sisters, are like, no, everything's fine, back off. And Bob is like, well, if they say it's fine, it's gotta be fine. And I'm like, Bob, are you a freaking idiot?
Cops, please.
Like, Bob's just kind of a dumb idiot, I think. I don't know.
Call, like, an ambulance or something. Because, like, if there's multiple injuries, like, that's suspicious.
It's suspicious.
And if there is any injury, like, get a medical professional. Like, are you dumb?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're dumb. So then the girls walk back to the inn, because that's all that they're willing to do, is go to the inn. And they send a doctor to the inn, right? So they walk away, and then Nancy's trying to figure out what happened with the sign, and she realizes it with Jim. So Jim is one of the guys from California.
Yeah. Wait, no. Yeah. That's Carl, who's the science dude. Jim and his wife, forgot her name.
Natalie, something like that.
Oh my gosh, now it's giving me, what's her name? Natalie?
Yeah, I actually don't remember what her name is. I'm so sorry.
Let me look. I am the quick reading person who just goes weird with Natalie. Yes, it is Natalie.
Okay, Natalie.
So that was word garbage.
Yeah, they're the ones from California. So Jim is like, no, the chain that the sign was hanging from, it's been cut through. So this has definitely been tampered with.
Yeah.
So someone possibly meant for somebody to get hurt. And they're like, okay, well, maybe we could try to figure it out. And then she finds a piece of paper. Yeah, the piece of paper, it says, R, meet me outside, D. And the only person we know with a D name is Derek. Good old resident weirdo hottie Derek. So she's like, we should probably let Bob know about this. And I'll go to the inn and talk to the girls. And Jim's like, okay, sure, sounds good. So Nancy's walking back to the inn, which it's not like she tells Bess and George that she's going to the inn, which I think is kind of a weird thing, but whatever. That's aside, I guess. So Nancy's walking, she goes into the inn, she knocks on the door, and she's like, I want to talk to you guys. And Rhonda's like, no, Rachel needs to sleep. And Nancy's like, but if she had a concussion, she needs to stay awake. And Rhonda just yells at her to go away, which, again, okay. And then Rachel finally is like, okay, come on in, we should talk. And she's like doing the tests or whatever. And then Nancy decides to reveal to them that she's a detective. And the girls are like, And Nancy's like, yeah. So I think something is, I think you need somebody to look out for you, I think is how she says it. Let me look. Yeah, I think you need someone to look out for you.
Yeah.
And Rachel's like, no way. These were 2 random accidents. And Nancy's like, no, they're not. You're dumb.
Yeah.
She doesn't say that, but
Yeah, but then the doctor gets there and they kick out Nancy. Yeah, and Nancy also is like, hey, do you recognize this note? Because it's kind of suspicious. And Rachel's like, I don't know, I never saw it. Which, like, suspicious.
Suspicious.
Because it also says that.
So they've cut forward to the next day, and Nancy's like, okay, well, I guess we'll ride together today because everybody hates me, which, mood. And then as they're getting ready to leave, Nancy looks down into the alley by the inn, and Rhonda is whispering to the guy in the black overcoat missing the pinky. What?
Gasp.
So that is, there's that. And then Nancy's like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. And the man sees Nancy and he starts to back away from Rhonda. And so, they like put on this whole show like it was just like a random meeting or whatever. And Nancy's like, who are you talking to? And Rhonda's like, what are you talking about? And Nancy's like, that guy. And Rhonda's like, I don't know. It's just like a whole bunch of like, okay, this is the weirdest conversation. And I just feel like so much of the dialogue written in this book is so funny in not really a way that's meant to be funny. But this whole like, who are you talking to? I don't know. Well, I saw the guy he was talking to you. Well, I don't know who he was. Like, oh, okay. All right. And Nancy keeps
and now
pushing.
It comes for another grammatical mistake that bothered me because there's a lot of grammatical mistakes in this book. But you know how, because I just have to mention this, I have to, because you know how when you are doing a quotation in dialogue and you have the 2 quotation marks on the edge, but if you have something inside that dialogue, you put it with single mark quotations, at least in American grammar.
Yes.
Yeah, they didn't. They just added another quotation on one side, so instead of it being 2 quotation marks on the outside, and then the single quotation mark things on the inside, it just has 2 quotation marks on the outside. And they forgot to put a second one for the detective eyes quote, because the quote is, I didn't get that close a look. You've got a knack for identifying people. Must be your detective eyes. And detective eyes is supposed to be in quotations, but it's not done the right way. And
it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
At least let me look over a book before you publish it. Like, jeez.
So then Nancy and Rhonda finish talking, and Nancy goes back to the bikes, and they're going to get started on the bikes. But she's like, I want to follow the Selkirks. And Bess is like, oh, you have to be kidding me. I can't cycle like that. And honestly, I feel that, because I couldn't do all of that.
Yeah, I feel.
So Nancy tells them about everything that she just saw, and about the note. And they're talking about that, and Bess is like, oh, the possibilities in this love triangle are endless. And you're like, okay. And then Camilla and Derek come out at that moment, and they're acting all lovey-dovey, which is so weird because he treats her like she doesn't exist for most of the book.
Yeah.
So, Nancy even says something like, they're very weird and I don't understand them. But they get out. And then Rachel or Natalie asks Rachel like how her head is doing, and Rachel's like, "Oh, I'm perfectly peachy." And I'm like, I'd be like, I need sleep after that. I don't know. So they start doing there's so much of just like talking that doesn't matter, and then cycling. And then they cycle and they're following the Selkirks, and George gets up on her pedals to start catching up to Rachel, and then as she's turning onto the road, Terry's driving the van, and then he guns the van toward George and basically like tries to run her over, which is really sus.
What fun.
Yeah. So that happens, and George is cool. She's just, like, chilling on the pavement. She's not hurt, but she obviously kind of, like, fell off the bike, and Bob is, like, yelling at Terry, and he's explaining how, like, this is not the first time that something like this has happened, which I'm kind of like, I feel
maybe this
like
isn't the job for Terry.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, I feel like if this has happened more than once, this is like grounds for termination. I don't know.
Like,
running
if you make
people
a few
over is
mistakes,
a pretty big mess up.
Yeah, I was like, if you make a few mistakes at your job, that's fine. You don't need to be fired. But when your mistakes are like life ending, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It's
So,
just
they
a bit
get
much for me.
Yeah, they get back on their bikes. Everything's cool. Except for now Nancy is really suspicious of Terry, which, you know, okay, sure, I get it.
Yeah.
And George is like, do you think Terry was trying to hit me? And Nancy's like, I don't know, man. He definitely didn't try to not hit you.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, well, let's get back to you know, business, catching up to the Selkirk. So then it's just a bunch of pages of, like, them riding their bikes, and then they come across a huge flock of sheep in the road, which, honestly, I think that would be kind of cute.
You know what? Maybe that's what they used to inspire Haunting of Castle Malloy.
Oh, the sheep.
That is another thing that they have as a similarity that I didn't realize before, is the sheep.
One more vague tie. So.
Oh yeah, it's totally just like the Haunting of Castle Malloy.
Yeah, totally just
There's
like it.
sheep. Like, that's it.
Yeah, it takes place on Earth, like, you know, obviously.
At least it's in Ireland, though.
True.
Like,
so, but, like, I think that coming across the sheep on the road would be kind of a cute thing, but it's kind of posed as, like, a nuisance or whatever. So they can't really get through.
They do have to go around and stuff.
Yeah, they can't really get through the sheep. And then at that point, Derek and Camilla catch up to them, and they help them kind of, like, herd the sheep back into the pasture. So the implication that, or I guess the suspicion that Nancy, Bess, and George have is that the Selkirks, like, opened the gate and let the sheep out. So they're like, okay, well, let's keep going. So they keep going, and then they get to a cliff, and they look down, and they're admiring the things, and Derek is like, I'm gonna get some pictures. And Nancy's like, okay, but then she notices that his camera has a telephoto lens instead of a panoramic lens, so it would be for, like, close-ups. And she's like, how you gonna take landscape photos with a lens like that? So she's even more sus of Derek. So they see Carl downhill, and they're like, okay, we'll go down there. And Carl's talking about how, as a scientist, he finds the geology really cool, and that's really neat. And so they're talking about geology for, like, a page. And then Nancy's like, oh, well, we don't see the Selkirks anymore, or whatever, we gotta get going. Okay, see you at lunch, bye. So they keep biking and biking and biking and biking and biking. And then they start to see the Selkirks again ahead of them. Mm-hmm. And the sisters pass a blue car on the road, and then the car picks up speed, and Nancy's like, uh-oh, this is suspicious too. So the blue car's going faster and faster, and the Selkirks kind of move over to let the car pass, but instead the car runs them off the road. 'Cause, you know,
wow, this must be another coincidence.
Yeah, like, you know, this is just normal behavior, I guess. So then Nancy, Bess, and George are like, oh, shoot, okay, we gotta go. So they, like, race down there. That was my racing noises.
I love them.
Thank you.
Good racing noises.
Thank you.
You should do sound effects for Mario Kart.
Yeah, I could. At least I didn't say ka-chow. Well, then I did, but... What?
I cannot believe that ka-chow has accidentally become one of my catchphrases.
It's a recurring phrase now.
It's a bit. We can use it as a bit.
Yeah, it's a bit. Ka-chow! Maybe I'll, edit in, like, the sound clip of Lightning McQueen.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Like, Cherry, runs over George. The mysterious blue car runs the girls off the road.
Mm-hmm. So then they catch up, and they don't seem to be super hurt, so they're like, okay, that's cool. And then Terry shows up in the van. And George is like, oh, well, that was convenient. And Nancy's like, oh, okay, well, let's keep going. We gotta get faster. And so, and then Nancy says something. Let me find it. Hang on. She's like, oh, yeah, he almost hit George this morning. I don't want to leave him alone with Rhonda and Rachel. Like, he's obviously a madman who will just run over whoever he wants in his van. So we gotta get down there. So they make it down to Rhonda and Rachel, and Terry's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to completely replace your wheel. You can ride along in the van if you want, but you're gonna have to skip the cave. And then he's like, whose bike is this? And Rhonda says it's hers. So she goes with Terry and the bike, and Rachel looks at Nancy, and she's like, oh, thanks for phoning Terry. And Nancy was like, I didn't do that. And then Carl's like, I guess Carl, Derek, and Camilla saw it too, and they like race up, and Carl's like, no, that was me. I called it, or whatever. And so, and Nancy looks up the hill, and Derek is watching them through his camera.
Wow. Really not suspicious.
It's like, have you seen Stranger Things?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how, like, in the first season of Stranger Things, like, it's a plot point that, like, Jonathan is watching Nancy and Steve through Steve's bedroom window or whatever?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
Creepy.
It's always just a little creepy when people are watching people through a camera lens.
It's like, bruh, maybe, like, don't. I don't know.
Yeah. So they leave, Terry and Rhonda. They leave, and Rachel's like, okay, feel better. And then Nancy is like so scared about leaving Rhonda with Terry, which is sus, I guess. Like, she really is like making Terry out to be like the biggest villain of them all. So, and then Rachel admits about the sheep, that they let the sheep out. And then that's kind of, Nancy asks Rachel about the car that ran them off the road. And Rachel's like, nah, I don't know who the car was. It's not, I just think it's kind of weird. And then Rachel admits that Rhonda lied about whose bike it was too. Like, which is weird. And she says it was because Rhonda knew Rachel wanted to see the cave, which just seems like a strange reason.
No, they're just giving not great vibes.
Yeah. I don't know. So they make it to the cave, right? And the cave's cool, and it's like all illuminated and like neat. And Rachel's like hanging out with Nancy a lot because she doesn't have her sister there. Finally, Bess is like, I'm tired of the way he throws himself at the Selkirks. And then George is like, are you jealous? And Bess is like, nah, he could be hot, but who wants a boyfriend who flirts with other girls? And like, yeah, that's what we've been saying this whole time.
Yes. Yeah. Like, yeah.
So
I have no other words.
Yeah. Nancy's thinking about the blue car, and George is like, well, what if the incidents are aimed at the tours, like the tour, not necessarily the Selkirks, they just happen to be unlucky or whatever. And Nancy's like, oh, it's a theory, but like it's weird that like so many of the incidents have involved just the Selkirks, So
yeah.
they then Terry shows up again in the van, and everybody else piles into the van, and they drive around the bay into the city, and they are kind of looking around, and it's just a little bit of like a history lesson here. And then they get to in, and Bess is going up to the room, and George is like, hey, I want to check out this pottery shop. Do you want to go with me? And Nancy's like, oh, yeah, bet. Pottery, cool. So then they go into, like, the shops in Galway City, and they're looking at the stuff in the pottery shop, and as Nancy's looking around, she runs into the Pinky Man again.
It says now it was his left hand. That's right.
Okay, left hand Pinky Man.
But, like, missing. I'm just gonna say, like, they could have done this in, like, any other way other than having them go completely out of the way to go to a pottery shop and then run into him there.
I know. It seems so strange. Like, I don't know.
There's no point other than we're going to go to this completely different location for this one thing.
Yeah. So then Nancy's like, oh, I gotta get a better look at this dude. So she moves so she can see his face and, like, takes note of his face. And, like, everything he's wearing and stuff like that. And then he calls out to the shopkeeper and he asks, like, a question. And she answers his question. It's about Clostermaid, which is, like, a manor, I guess, nearby. And it doesn't, like, function anymore. Like, it's abandoned. So it's a little bit of information. And then Nancy turns around so that he doesn't, like, recognize her. And the dude leaves. And then Nancy decides, I'm gonna chase this man. So she chases this man throughout the whole town. And George is chasing Nancy. So they're just running around Galway City or whatever. And she loses him. And George had also lost Nancy. So Nancy's like, oh, bummed. And George is like, oh, but I did see his car. And she got his license plate, which is helpful info. So now we have that, even though the car is gone. So I think George asks Nancy if she's going to take it to the police, and Nancy says something like, we're not in River Heights. They're not just going to do things for me because So basically Nancy completely acknowledges her privilege, right?
Yeah.
And how in River Heights she can basically get anything she needs because she is who she is, which I think is so strange for a book, for, like, a Nancy Drew book to, like, I don't know, acknowledge that. I don't know. It just seemed odd. But then, I think, then they're like, maybe we should try to convince Bob to report the incidents. And they're like, nah, I don't know if that's going to happen. So,
yeah.
They get back to the hotel room and there's, like, a time skip. And, George is like, what did Bob say? And Nancy's like, yeah, he won't do nothing. 'Cause I don't know. He doesn't want to do any of it. Because Rhonda and Rachel said they didn't want him to go. And so they're like, okay, whatever. So then they're like, all right, let's go to dinner. So we're going to go to dinner, and Rachel's friendly some days and grumpy other days is what they're talking about. And then it goes back to breakfast the next morning. And they're going to ride again. I'm trying to see if there's anything super... Oh, Nancy decides that she's going to stay behind. And she's going to sneak around Rhonda and Rachel's room. So everybody leaves. And then Nancy goes up to the maid. And she lies and says that she just checked out of this room. And she thinks she forgot something. And she wants to go back and check. And so the maid lets her in. Which, I worked in hotels for many years. That's a no-no. You don't just let people into rooms without verifying their identity. So anyway, Nancy goes in there and she's looking around and she notices how messy they are, which that doesn't really have any bearing on anything. It just seems like a dig at the Selkirks.
Yeah, it sounds like, Nancy is really judgy, as we have seen. So
anyway, the only thing
but, like, at the same time, though, since they are moving from hotel rooms a lot, like, I think it would be impressive to get her hotel room that dirty after, like, one day.
True.
So I do understand where she's coming from, though.
Yeah,
with
me
that
too.
part.
I just thought it was a strange thing to, like, include because it seems like, I don't know. Was the implication was that had somebody already ransacked their room? I never really understood why there was so much emphasis on how messy they were. But so the only thing Nancy finds of any interest is a tabloid newspaper that was in the wastebasket, or no, beside the wastebasket. So she grabs it and she like shoves it into her pack, and then the door opens and Nancy turns around and it's Derek. And Nancy's like, "What you doing here?" And Derek's like, "What are you doing here?" And then it's like, I don't know, it's like the funny standoff, and then the chapter ends. So that's the end of chapter 9. How many chapters are in this book? 16?
16.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So we cruising. I feel like I'm going really slow. Am I going really slow? Should I speed this up?
Maybe a bit. Maybe
Okay.
go a bit more ka-chow, so to speak.
Ka-chow! Okay, so the next thing we're doing... Okay, so Nancy's like, "Oh, I'm just here to grab something for Rhonda. She asked me to come back and grab something." And Derek's like, "Oh, well, I came back to get a cable for my laptop." And Nancy's like, "Well, you're in Rachel and Rhonda's room." And Derek's like, "What? Oh, haha, silly me. I got the rooms mixed up. Haha, I'm gonna leave now. You should also leave now with me so that we are together and not in the room." And that's basically what Derek says. He's just very strange. So,
not at all suspicious.
Yeah. So then they leave and they're like, "Oh, we gotta hurry or we're gonna miss the ferry." So they like gun it on the bikes. They're gunning on the bikes. And they get there, and then there's a lot of talk about, like, the scenery and things like that. And they're riding over on a ferry to the, like, little island that they're going to stay at next. And they realize that Derek is actually kind of bad at riding a bike, which I think is really funny. So they get to the hilltop fort. The bikes are all there. The van is there. Terry's sleeping in the driver's seat, because apparently he'd been here before. And they're looking around on the ruins. And, yeah, they're all kind of talking. And Rhonda is over she's, like, sitting on these rocks. And so Nancy goes over there and she's like, "Oh, we missed you at dinner." And Rhonda's like, "Oh, I needed to rest. And everything's good as new with my wheel." And then Nancy just goes straight in, do you know who's trying to hit you?" And Rhonda was like, nope. So, Nancy kind of goes at it again with, like, "I think somebody's after you." And Rhonda's like, "Just shut up. You don't know anything. Nobody's after me." And, then Nancy sees Derek, and he's kind of, like, hiding behind a boulder watching Rachel because he's a weirdo. And, Nancy's kind of circling around, like, the ruin site. And then she looks up because she hears a weird sound, and there's, like, an ancient stone, and it's, like, tumbling straight toward Nancy, and it, like, she, like, avoids the rock, but she falls because, like, as she's trying to avoid the rock, and she slides over the cliff, and now she's, like, clutching at the ground, trying not to fall over the cliff, which is really terrifying. And below her is the ocean. And then it's like nobody's really, like, there until she's already, like, crawled back to safety. And she's, like, chilling. Yeah. And Bob comes over. And, because, you know, Bob, the guy who does nothing to help anybody, comes over to try to help Nancy. He's just
there.
Huh?
He's just there.
Yeah, he's just there. And then Bob's like, "Okay, well, come picnic." And Nancy's like, "Okay, cool, great." So they're picnicking for a little while, and she is like, Derek was standing by that rock. That's suspicious. So she's very suspicious. And then we get to the dancing. We cut forward to the Irish dancing. And then there's pages and pages of dancing and dance lessons, and they don't have anything to do with anything, actually.
Well, George tries, and it's like, "Oh no, I can't Irish dance. I can't do the Irish dancing." It's like, I mean, yeah, it's hard, and it takes many years, George.
Yeah, pretty much. But overall, that scene means nothing, because then they go back to the hotel, and Nancy picks up the newspaper thing that she got out of the Selkirk's room, and they're looking over it, and Bess is like, ew, this is a sleazy paper. It's like tacky celebrity gossip. And Nancy's like, well, this is what was in their room. Let me see why they wanted it. And then she's like flipping through it, and George is like, oh, look. And she points at an article, and it's written by Derek. And so they're like, oh, he's a sleazy journalist.
Yeah.
Everything's explained. All of his weird behavior is now explained. So, why is he following the Selkirks? So now it's like, okay, well, at least we know he's a journalist. But why does it seem like the Selkirks are his story? So we're going to do some research at the Cyber Cafe. Because keep in mind, this was 2002.
Yeah.
So, it was pretty uncommon at that point, I think, to have like internet in your home. So, we got to go to the Cyber Cafe. So they send Bess to do that because she's apparently good at research. And then we cut again to breakfast. And let's see. Everybody's suspicious of Nancy and George, and I get it. They're kind of acting weird. And then Camilla comes down, and she's strapping on her helmet, and she's being all huffy. And Nancy's like, oh, hey, where's Derek? And Camilla's like, Derek's gone. And they're like, what do you mean? And she's like, yeah, we fought, and he left. So he's probably at the airport right now. And she then reveals that, like, the only reason he was here was to do, like, a smear job on the Selkirks. And they're like, why? And she's like, oh, because he's mad at their dad. So, motivation.
Take it out of the daughters, I guess. Ugh.
Yeah. It's like, okay, all right. So, because I guess years ago, Derek worked for their dad's company and he got laid off or whatever. And so it's like, now he's going to, like, ruin their reputation. It's just like, okay, you're being kind of a silly man right now.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the whole story with that, and like why he has the camera. And Camilla's like, yeah, that's why we were fighting, because he was flirting with them, trying to like get more information. And I kind of get mad at that, and I don't blame Camilla. I would also get mad at that.
Yeah.
So then there's more biking, and I'm just kind of scrolling forward. Everybody's like, all the weird stuff is happening. We're going to an old monastery tonight for sleeping, and it's on a weird like road, and when the tide comes in, it like cuts off the road, so you got to be there on time or else you're not going to make it.
This definitely will not lead to anything bad happening.
Definitely not. So, okay, oh yeah, and then Bess is like, she has gone and done the research. She comes back, she has the information about the Selkirks, and all of the stuff that happened, with Derek. So, that's about, I mean, it's not really anything more than what I just said, so,
yeah.
Then Nancy's like, okay, well, let's see. Oh yeah, okay, so Rhonda's like, Rachel... Okay, yeah. Rachel's missing. Rhonda's like, Rachel's missing. And we had an argument. She got mad. She rode away. I had the phone. And so now we gotta find Rachel. Rachel's missing. So Nancy's like, okay, well, I'm going to cycle across the road and see if I can find where, like, the van is, because she was supposed to be with Terry, and we'll go from there. And so she finds the van, and it's in the ditch, and there's blood in there, and there's no people. And she's like, oh, crud, what do I do now? So, then she starts to search the area. She doesn't have a phone because she's dumb and didn't grab one. Like, there's like a billion phones in this tour. Nancy, why would you not grab one?
Yeah. Nancy, in this book, forgets to take a phone with her when she's going off somewhere. Not too unlike Nancy in the games, who goes to foreign countries all the time and never brings money with her.
Yeah.
So it's just, she's suspicious of everyone, and she's like, I'm smart because I'm suspicious of everyone. But you don't bring basic necessities with you, Nancy!
Exactly. It's like, I'm surprised Nancy wears shoes. I don't know. So she sees footprints and other car tracks all in the mud, in the boggy mud around the van. And so she's like, oh, crud. Well, this looks like it's bad, so I need to make it back to the monastery. So but oh no, the tide's coming in. So now she's got to like ride really fast across the road, and it's getting watery and it's starting to flood. And the waves are coming. The waves are coming up on the causeway, and she's biking so fast, and she's ka-chowing all over the place. Ka-chow! And she makes it. Just barely. She makes it. And Bob's like,
Yay!
I was afraid you were going to have to find a place to stay on the mainland. And Nancy's like, well, I couldn't call because I forgot a phone because I'm a big dumb idiot. But the van is crashed by the side of the road. And Rhonda freaks out, and she's like, Nancy's like, I didn't see her or Terry or anything like that. And then she's like, but I think somebody might have been hurt because there was blood on the dashboard. I think it was probably Terry's. There was a set of footprints, and then car prints. And Rhonda turns pale, and so Nancy's like, okay, Rhonda, the jig is up. You gotta tell us what's going on, because it's obvious that you know things. And Rhonda was like, yeah, I jammed my bike's gears to make Rachel ride on without me. I was going to wait for Derek. And Camilla's like, well, Derek left. And the blue car came. And I think it was Stuart Smithson. And Nancy's like, who the heck is that? And he's like, he works for our father. And it turns out he is the missing Pinky Man. And he got mad at their dad because everybody's mad at their dad apparently. And
yeah,
and he was staying in Ireland anyway, even though he was told that he doesn't need to be a bodyguard to them. So that's why they were talking. And Rhonda admits that basically all of the accidents against them were setups, which would make me very mad if I was Nancy.
Yeah.
And so Rhonda's like, yeah, so I told Stuart Smithson that, like, it was cool, like, we did all the things we needed to do to, like, for the setups, and, like, he could leave. But then he didn't leave. I don't know if our father, like, had him here for any reason or whatever. They talk about that for a little bit, and then, okay, there's a cry from the hallway. Rhonda's standing by the front desk because there's a call that came in, and there's a ransom note from Stuart Smithson, and he has Rachel in the Irish countryside, and he wants $3 million for her. So now we have a kidnapping. So Nancy decides that she's going... Yeah, kidnappings are fun. So now Nancy's like, okay, now we got a kidnapping. So finally, they get the police involved. And Nancy's like, I'm a detective. And they're like, cool, you can help us. So basically, they go marching through the bog to the manor that the guy... Stuart Smithson mentioned earlier in the pottery shop. So they're marching through the bog to the manor because Nancy's pretty sure this is where he's got Rachel. And they get there, and like the police guys are pretty cool, but like kind of boring. And they get there, and the one officer is like talking to him, and Nancy's like, yeah, keep him distracted. Oh, by the way, they also find Terry. He was, like, wandering around in the bog, and they bring him to, like, a pub, and he's cool. He's fine. He's just a little disoriented. He needs a good sleep and a cup of tea.
Yeah.
But Terry's cool. He's fine. But they get to the manor, and Nancy is like, I'll sneak in the back, or whatever. So the officer is talking to the guy, and after they almost fell into the bog mud, by the way. Okay, so Nancy opens the door really fast, and he's really surprised, and he turns around, and he swings his gun toward Nancy, and Rachel, like, breaks out of his grip, and Nancy karate chops the weapon out of his hand, because now this is
it's her inner Miss Piggy coming out.
Yeah, inner Miss Piggy.
It's a little,
and then, oh, hang on, I skipped something that was very important. And I don't remember where it was. But at some point, there is Australian slang
Oh,
that is thrown
yes,
about.
and I had asked an Australian Clue Crew member, Charity, aka Chaz. Chaz, is it? I don't know how to pronounce your username, Charity. I love you.
Chaz versus
Is it
Jazz?
Chaz? Chaz versus Jazz? I think that's it. Anyway, I love you.
Thank you for your
But
input.
I asked, I asked her, "Hey, do Australian people really say this? Because it's a Nancy Drew book. You can never be too careful about. Do these people actually talk like this?" But Rhonda says, anyway, Rachel Rodolph called me a drongo and a booth head and all sorts of names. And I
Yeah.
asked Charity, do you really say this stuff? And she said, yeah.
Okay, so
And I
at
was like,
least we know that that was
fun.
accurate. But I'm sorry I forgot that. But that was an important
Yeah.
point that I wanted to make. So anyway, so Nancy karate chops the gun, and then she tackles Smithson, and they're like, fighting or whatever, and then he gets arrested, and Rachel's happy. And then we flash forward again to the monastery, and everybody's there, and Rachel and Rhonda's dad shows up. They kind of just wrap everything up, and that's basically it. That's basically the thing. And
Yep.
that's the mystery. That's the mystery.
Yeah, it's a book.
It's a book.
That's for sure.
What did you think about the book?
It was a book.
Okay. Do you have... Okay, well, that was the plot and mystery.
Yeah.
I guess we could talk about the characters or dialogue. Was there any... Do you have any additional notes on characters and dialogue?
Honestly, I don't. My favorite character was probably Carl. Because he's just there as a nerdy professor dude. Just minding his own business.
Yeah.
My least favorite is probably Derek.
Yeah. I think my favorite is like...
Yeah.
Actually, I think my least favorite is Bob. He's so useless.
Useless. Yeah.
Like, you're supposed to be leading this. At some point, you have to make the decision that, like, the safety of this tour is more important than whatever, weird things I promised a few people on the tour. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the stuff in this I will say, okay, so I am a writer, and I do like analyzing literature and also writing my own stuff. And so sometimes when I read a book, I'm distracted by bad prose, and I was distracted by a lot of this. Like, they use the same dialogue tags. Like, I'm looking at one of the pages, and all of the dialogue starts out with a dialogue tag of Selkirk shrugged, Rachel smiled, and then it's Morian nodded, Rachel shuddered, Jacob Selkirk smiled proudly, Nancy nodded, Rhonda closed her eyes, Selkirk reached over and patted her knee. And, like, there's a lot of, like, stuff like that where it's, the prose just isn't great, but I have to remind myself this is for, like, 13-year-olds.
True. I know at one point there's a typo, like a bad typo, where they don't capitalize the word Bess.
Yeah, there's a few typos in here. Like, there's one thing where they didn't capitalize another thing. I don't remember where it was. I should have highlighted it, but it's not great. They needed another editor, or I don't know. Did they even have an editor for this?
It kind of seems like they didn't, or if they did, that person should be fired.
Yeah. But it is a book.
So
let me see if I can do any research on the Nancy Drew bike tour mystery. Okay.
We can also
Let's
talk
go
about
on Yield Wikipedia.
We could talk about the atmosphere / setting too if you want, which it's fine.
is fine.
It wasn't anything
it didn't
super
really
immersive, though.
No, it didn't do anything that much for me. Like, we did get to go a lot of places, but we didn't get to enjoy those places. You know what I mean? It was just, you're moving on too fast for any of these locations to add to the mystery, you know?
Yeah.
So like, that's one of the things I do like about the Nancy Drew PC games is that you are stuck in only a few locations, and so you get to know them really well.
Right.
And
they all serve a purpose for some reason or another. And I felt like this location this book had so many locations that served no purpose that they all just kind of blend together.
Exactly, yeah. And like, if you have a book or a story or something where people are moving from one place to another really fast, like, for example, Lord of the Rings, that makes sense because it's a quest story. You're not, like, trying to solve a mystery. But I feel like with solving a mystery, you do need to kind of try to have it at least in one location.
Yeah.
One general location instead of just constantly changing places. Because, like, there's a reason there is the whole... Almost everybody loves the locked room mystery, you know? Because all the clues are right here, and you have to solve it with only these things and stuff. And when there's way too much stuff, it's, you know, it gets a little carried away. But it just I did like the mysteries that we've read, or the one we only read one of them, right? Yeah, we only read one of them, but I did like that one better than this one because there was a bit more continuity with places and stuff.
Yeah,
like you had places that you were familiar with, you had characters that you were familiar with. You could, you know, they were always going back to like the dressing rooms, the cars, the stage, the sports place. I don't know,
the arena,
but
the tennis.
Yeah,
arena.
but with this one, it's just every scene is in a new place,
right?
And that kind of. Yeah,
it wasn't beneficial
do it for me
overall.
Yeah, but
so
wasn't the worst thing I've read. Comparison to the game, what comparison?
That's what I was gonna say. There is no comparison to game. It's so vague. It's such a vague tie.
Like, okay, let me see. Okay, so I'm doing research on it, and it says adaptation. But there's no source. There's no source for these claims. And I'm trying to find where did you get the information that this is based? Is this what they based Haunting of Castle Malloy off of?
I think I could be wrong, but I think years ago, Lil Jackalope, posted on the Amateur Sleuth blog like a list, and it was like, here are the books that each game is based off of. I think it was something like that. I could be wrong.
I just came across a Kalina's page, but it was the bike race mystery, and it's a completely different one. But yeah, it's like this book has nothing to do with it. Oh. Well, hopefully next time we'll be able to read a book that actually has something to do with the book. Like, what's one that is more accurate? I know Stay Tuned for Danger is pretty accurate for some things. Stay Tuned for Danger is
pretty accurate. Secrets Can Kill is also fairly accurate. There's some weird stuff that happens in that book, though.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that until we get to the actual episode.
The biggest trip, though, so far of the books that I've read that are based, like games are supposedly based off of, is the book that Curse of Blackmore Manor is based off of. That book is wild.
I heard that one is wild. I think I listened to an episode of the Regular Nancy Drew podcast. Shout out to them. I love them. Where they talked about it, and I was like, what does this have to do with Curse of Blackmore Manor?
It's one of the weirdest books I've read in general, not to mention one of the weirdest Nancy Drew books, or weirdest, like, game adaptation sources. Like, so weird. Like, the whole thing is so weird.
Like, I've also read some pretty weird books, so I'm wondering if this one will be added in, like, the top 5, maybe.
Yeah. All right.
Like,
well,
just
do you have any
it's
other?
wild.
Do you have any other notes?
I don't think so. Other than, Derek is a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Bob needs to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 American people did literally nothing for the plot. They just literally weren't there
Yeah, pretty
for, like,
much.
anything. Just for 2 extra suspects.
Yeah.
Not even... They didn't even have any suspicion put on them.
Right.
My closing thought, I guess, is that it's a middle grade novel. Yeah.
Yeah. It was okay, but
It was
not
okay.
good. Yeah, that's my review.
Yeah. Alrighty.
All right.
So-
Well, I guess that's it. Oh, happy St. Patty's Day to everybody.
Yes.
That's the reason we
I'm
picked
so
this
sorry
book.
that our Ireland episode for St. Patrick's Day has to be this boring book where the only thing that's Irish is the location and the really random dancing scene.
But yes, go eat some shepherd's pie or something.
Corned beef.
Corned beef and hash.
I was gonna say shamrocks, but I don't. Lucky
don't-
Charms. I don't know. Is that stereotyping really badly?
I don't know.
So sorry, Irish people.
It's okay. Drink a Guinness.
Have fun and
Yeah, have fun, be safe.
wear green. Wear
Yeah,
like
wear
a
green.
Kermit the Frog costume or something. I don't know. Have fun.
We'll see you later in a couple weeks for our next episode. Bye-bye!
Bye.